Everyone. I think we can get started. I will first turn the microphone over to Brittany of Carry the Vision.
Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Equitable VMT Mitigation Program. So I am from Carry the Vision. Carry the Vision is focused on co-creating conditions that transcend our current structures and systems, such as those generated through community-led healing practices where the needs of people suffering from life changes are heard and seen. Central to this is our commitment to ensuring racial and gender equality, diversity, and inclusion in all our work. We bring diverse groups together to listen deeply, not only through the struggles people face, but also for the solutions that already exist within each one of us, and in the ideas and talents of individuals and their communities. Some examples of this in action are in-custody programming, reentry system navigation and peer mentoring, outreach into unhoused camps and locations, promoting outreach and community events, and social justice advocacy. Our role for this project is to basically get the community to engage and provide feedback on our behalf. There will be different languages provided. There will be a little world button at the bottom. It will open up after all the interpreters read in their own language. You can click the language that you would like to hear this meeting in, and everyone should pick. You do not have to use the default language.
Let's start with Spanish. Alex.
Buenas tardes, estamos ofreciendo esta presentación en vivo en español durante esta reunión. Mi nombre es Alex Simon, el intérprete en español. Haga clic en el botón Interpretation, que significa la parte interior del lado derecho de la pantalla de Zoom, cuando vea un icono de globo terráqueo y elija español, que es Spanish. Si se está uniendo a través de la aplicación Zoom para smartphone, teléfono inteligente, seleccione su idioma haciendo clic en More, que significa más, o en los 3 puntos en la esquina inferior derecha de la pantalla. Seleccione Language Interpretation, que es interpretación del idioma. Después elija Spanish y haga clic en Done, que significa listo. Si desea escuchar solo a los intérpretes y no a los oradores originales, asegúrese de hacer clic en Mute Original Audio, que significa audio original silenciado. Thank you very much. Gracias.
And let's go to Van with Vietnamese.
Xin chào quý vị ạ. Tôi tên là Nguyễn Hồng Vân và tôi sẽ là người phiên dịch tiếng Việt trong buổi họp cộng đồng ngày hôm nay. Thì lát nữa khi mà ban tổ chức bật chức năng dịch lên, thì quý vị sẽ nhìn thấy có một biểu tượng hình quả cầu ở bên dưới, ở cái thanh bên dưới cùng của màn hình, giống như là trên hình ảnh đang thể hiện với cái chữ là Interpretation. Thì khi mà quý vị ấn vào cái hình ảnh đó thì sẽ nhìn thấy một danh sách có các ngôn ngữ mà được dịch trong buổi họp hôm nay, thì trong đó có tiếng Việt. Thì quý vị hãy ấn vào phần tiếng Việt để được nghe phiên dịch tiếng Việt, và sau đó thì quý vị có thể ấn vào cái chữ là Mute Original Audio, có nghĩa là tắt cái tiếng gốc của người trình bày để không bị đè lên nhau. Và quý vị cứ làm như vậy thì là sẽ nghe được phần dịch cùng lúc với cả người nói ạ. Vâng, xin cảm ơn ạ. Thank you.
Thank you, Van. And now Jing in Mandarin.
大家好，这是 VTA 的 VMT 缓解项目，我是 Jane， 负责中文翻译。如果需要口译帮助的话，请点击口译，选择你想听到的语言，每个人都应该选择一个语言，不要使用设置。感谢。
This following meeting will be presented by Carry the Vision, me. Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Brittany Mendoza, VTA, Deanna Bolio, Ian Lynn, Lara Posadas, Rob Swear. Our interpreters, Alex Sakadam, Van Nguyen Hong, and Jing Yang. Caltrans, Mark Leong, and VRM Peers, Taylor McAdam. What is the project about? Our project is about reducing driving from development projects, improving transportation options, and improving equity, especially for the communities that need it the most.
Hi, everyone. This meeting will be recorded. We're planning to use the share this online for those who weren't able to be here this evening. So there will be several points in this meeting where we'll ask you to participate. And one of the ways to do that is to use the Q&A function to request Zoom technical assistance, ask questions, or share your comments at the appropriate times. A few reminders for productive meetings like this one that we're going to have tonight. We're going to ask everyone to be respectful of one another, to share your time and allow others to speak when we get to that portion so that we can hear from everybody. Everybody is going to be automatically muted to eliminate any kind of noise distractions. But when it's your time to speak, we will hit a button that allowing you to speak. We'll ask you to unmute yourself, and then you can make your comment. And just our disclaimer is that any disruptive participants may be removed from the meeting, but I don't expect that to happen tonight. Our agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the project overview, what input we are looking for today. We'll do a couple interactive exercises. We'll have a question and answer period, and then we'll talk about what the next steps are for this project. So right now, we're going to launch a quick demographics poll. If you've come to any of our previous VTA online meetings, you've probably seen a lot of these questions before. I just want to know that the information that we are getting from people is representative of the broad community that we serve. So let's start that poll now. Sorry, it's now open. So as you've noticed on our first few slides, that every slide has been translated, and it runs English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Mandarin. And so you are going to see that the poll also has those 4 options. So just find your appropriate language in that order and feel free to answer these questions here. So there are 5 questions. One is about the age of the people in the group. Another is about race and ethnicity. We ask about annual household income. And then speaking as a transportation agency, we ask about your primary mode of transportation. And finally, we ask for this meeting what your zip code might be, as that will help us understand with a county-wide project if we are actually getting to the whole county. So I'll leave this up for just maybe another 20 seconds, and then we'll close that.
Diana, hi, this is a Spanish interpreter. I have not been assigned to the Spanish channel, so I cannot interpret. Sorry.
Yes, sorry. And one of my co-hosts see if they can handle that on the back end while I share my screen. With that, I will end the poll. We'll share the results with you. So we had 19 people participate, so great. Thank you for your participation there. We see that our broadest age range is 25 to 34. Race and ethnicity, we're seeing a lot of white Caucasian and Asian American. We're going to scroll down, get to primary mode of transportation, and a lot of personal vehicle usage, along with bus, light rail, and bicycles. And then finally, oh, we can't see your zip codes, but we do appreciate those of you who shared it. And with that, we can conclude this section of the meeting. And I'll turn it over to Mark from Caltrans to give us a welcome.
Thank you, Deanna. Well, really appreciate the welcome. And thank you for all your time for being here in this evening. I'm Mark Leong, and I'm the Caltrans Bay Area Sustainability Coordinator, and really happy to be here today and to contribute as much of Caltrans's input into this very important project for the Bay Area. So
Chuyện đóng góp của Caltrans về cái dự án này.
as the slide shows, Caltrans recently marked its 50th anniversary as the owner and operator of the state's highway and freeway network. And so over those 5 decades, Caltrans has worked towards providing a safe and reliable multimodal transportation network with an emphasis on maximizing safety, minimizing impacts of automobiles, and advancing equity. So a few programs and projects and studies that contribute toward those efforts include, for example, implementing the Bay Area Bike and Pedestrian Plan, supporting projects and studies to reconnect disadvantaged communities impacted by transportation facilities, including the state's freeways and highways. And last but not least, coordinating the sustainable transportation planning grants, of which this project was funded through. And so there's much work ahead of us to serve our partner agencies and our communities. And so with that said, I'm really happy to be part of this very important project and to contribute where I can to help in this project's success. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Deanna.
Thank you, Mark. And right now, I believe that I hand it over to Rob, our project manager, to talk about what this project is about.
Great. Thank you, Deanna. I'm Rob Swerk. I'm a principal planner here at VTA, and the work I do here focuses on working with our cities and the county on land use and transportation related work. So when there are, for instance, major development projects happening or land use plans that are being considered, VTA works with local jurisdictions like the cities and the county to make sure that transportation considerations are factored in. So that leads to the work that we're doing on this project. And as Deanna said, I'm the VTA project manager. And as Brittany said earlier, this project is about a couple of things. One is just helping work with the cities and the county to reduce driving from development projects. So for instance, from new apartment buildings, office buildings, shops, and services. It's also about using a program like this to improve transportation options. And then hopefully in doing this, improving equity, especially for populations and areas that need it the most. Next slide. This diagram illustrates the concept of the project. On the left side, you can see development projects, as I mentioned, like apartments or new office buildings, mixed use developments that might have multiple uses. When you see them going in, you'll see they generate some more cars. We are trying to leverage that to produce more transportation solutions for the community. So more options for transit, biking, walking, carpooling, and so forth. And in the middle, something that would kind of connect these two things would be a new program that would help reduce the amount of driving or mitigate via VMT or vehicle miles traveled. The purpose of this study is really to look at what that program might look like, what kinds of things it would fund, and how to prioritize those things. And that's where your input is so important today. Next slide. So back to this term, vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. You probably have seen it on our materials. It's an important measure of how much people are driving. And the reason it's important is because VMT is tied to other things like air quality, health, noise, and street safety. VMT is also a very important factor in the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that we emit. So both local air quality and greenhouse gas emissions, which affect global climate change. Next slide. So it is important that we reduce the amount of VMT out there, and there are a number of ways that we can do this. This slide illustrates some of those ways. We can improve bicycle and pedestrian options so that they're safer and more comfortable. We can provide incentives to make transit more affordable, and for instance, free or discounted transit passes. We can work to make sure that transit is faster and is more frequent and more convenient for people to use as a viable option. And we can look at the land use side of things to bring housing, jobs, shops, and services together so that you don't have to go out and drive for every kind of thing that you would like to do. And there are other options as well. So then, why are we focusing on equity in this project? Well, when you think about development projects happening in one location and potentially having the VMT reducing measures or the transportation improvements that come along with that development happening somewhere else, whether it's within the same city, but maybe not right on the site, or across town, or perhaps even in another city, you are going to start thinking about equity, making sure that things actually improve conditions for people who need it the most, maybe for people in an area that has been impacted by, for instance, air quality or noise from a freeway. We want to make sure to consider equity. So we're looking at engaging people who have been historically underrepresented, who don't necessarily in the past have not been involved in the planning process, making sure to engage them, and then making sure to create equitable outcomes from this process. So thinking about whatever program might come from this or framework of a program, making sure that that framework is equitable. Next slide. So we're engaging with people in a number of different ways. The slide here shows just a variety of them. We're doing virtual meetings like we have tonight, and we're so happy that you have joined us. We have a community survey out, which is available on the web. If you go to the project website, there's a link there, or I think it's actually www.vta.org/VMT survey. We also have pop-up events where we're coming out to the community with table and boards, and we're talking with community members to get their input. In fact, we were in Alviso at the Day on the Bay Festival just this past Saturday. And then we're doing presentations to groups. So if you're involved with an organization, a nonprofit or a community organization, we would love to come and give a presentation to your group. So feel free to reach out to us. Next slide. This is just an example of some of the recent engagement events where we've been out in the community. On the left, we were out at Viva Calle San Jose, the Open Streets event back in September. And on the right shows the Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action Summit that was held at De Anza College in late July. And it was wonderful to see just the enthusiasm of so many students passionate about helping address the climate crisis. We talked with them about this project and others. So how will we use your input as we go along with this process? The slide here shows the main path where we'll use your input and how we will continue to engage with the community over the course of this project. We're currently in phase 1 of our community engagement on the left side of the slide. So we're basically gathering as much input as possible, and then we will summarize it and basically put it into categories of different types of improvements and what people have suggested. In phase 2, we will filter and refine that. So we will take the input and we will help filter it so that we see what could go towards a program like this and what might be other really good ideas that could go to, for instance, the cities or the county or other departments in VTA, we will make sure that your input gets transmitted one way or another. And then in the last phase, we will pull together and confirm what we heard, and we will summarize things in a report and also presentations. We will present to, for instance, the VTA board and committees and other partners like the cities and the county if they would like to have us come present on this project. And I think I would turn this over now to Taylor from Farron Piers.
Great. Yeah, hi everyone. So we wanted to acknowledge as part of this presentation that, we're not starting from scratch here. There has already been a ton of great planning work, both done by VTA and by individual jurisdictions, kind of local plans, as well as countywide efforts. Some of them are shown here. VTA, for example, has completed a better bus stops plan. And then there's local planning like the East San Jose Multimodal Transportation Improvement Plan and City of Mountain View's Multimodal Improvement Plan. And these are just a couple of examples, but we're taking all of the ideas that came out of these planning efforts and using them as part of this plan as well. Next slide. So my piece of the presentation tonight is kind of leading into an engagement activity where you'll get your first opportunity to kind of speak up and share ideas. But the first part of this is in order to kind of propose those transportation solutions that Rob and Brittany mentioned, we need to understand what the biggest travel challenges are that you face today so that we can match solutions with challenges. So start thinking about that. And then we can go to the next slide. And then we'll get into whether some of the solutions that we're proposing, both because their options, all these options would help reduce driving, but what we ultimately want to know is whether these are also transportation solutions that could help kind of address some of your biggest challenges. And these are ideas that have come out of those past studies I mentioned, as well as research around the state where these types of things have been implemented. So I'm gonna walk through, you can go to the next slide. I'm gonna walk through each of these kind of categories of improvements, and then we'll get into the interactive activity. So first off is on-demand mobility. This refers to anything that you can rent for a short period of time. So a zip car is a common example of this, but you don't have to own a car. You could, the first part of your day, you could walk and bike and other modes, but if you need a car just for a short trip, it's available. The same thing is true for bike share or scooter share. You can just rent it for a short period of time and even just a one-way trip and leave it and then take another mode. So that's the first type of solution. Next slide shows walking and biking paths. And of course, we have many of these in the county already, sidewalks, crosswalks, but they are not everywhere and they're not equally distributed throughout the county. Or if they're there, sometimes they're not super high quality, they're old or small. And so, looking at kind of improving what is already out there, as well as building new paths, especially paths that can travel a much longer distance in the county and connect kind of key destinations. And for bike paths, this includes both on street as well as separate bike paths. Now you can go to the next one. So the third category of solution actually has more to do with land use than transportation itself. And it is about building our communities so that things are just closer together. So this means your house or your apartment might be right near a coffee shop or a grocery store or a laundromat or transit. And so things are just much closer together. And especially as, you know, new projects continue to be constructed in the county, we'd want to make sure that is how they are built. And so this one really has to do with things are close by, and so you can walk or maybe bike more easily than you can today. Next slide. So the fourth kind of category of solution is providing frequent and fast transit service. And again, this is not brand new. There is lots of great transit in Santa Clara County, but this is about making it more frequent, maybe faster, and also maybe introducing it in places where it doesn't run today. And so this includes buses, light rail, and also paratransit, kind of, you know, on-demand transit services. Okay, two more categories. This one is about transit, bike, and carpool incentives. And by incentives, I mean, you know, making something cheaper or more convenient. So in some case, it could be like a transit pass or a discount on a transit pass using Clipper or another method. And then it also could mean like spatially, you know, a spatial incentive. So if you're going to drive to work, if you drive with more than one person, you carpool, maybe all the parking spaces closest to the building are reserved for carpoolers. Same thing if you were to drive to like a shopping mall, there could be the most convenient spaces right out front reserved for carpool. Okay, and then the final category of improvement is about travel cost. So this includes, you know, making transit cheaper or maybe even free in some cases, or for some users like youth or older adults. But it also means potentially making components of driving more expensive in the times where it's super competitive and everyone wants to use the road or drive to a parking, you know, kind of park in the prime spaces. And so it could mean making parking more expensive, like right in during the busy rush hours for dinner or whatever. And potentially also pricing the road at peak congestion time so that people who don't need to travel at that time are encouraged to, you know, come before or after that time. So this one is the last category, and what we're going to do now is we're going to do an interactive exercise. If you go to the next slide, that will look at both of these questions. So what are your biggest travel challenges today? And then what are some of the options or solutions that might help you solve those challenges? And do any of those solutions also, do you think they might also encourage you to drive less? So at this time, I'm going to share my screen. And I invite you to share your thoughts in the chat box or by raising your hand. And I'm going to type what I see up here. So chat box, someone just typed chat box is disabled, but oh, I see. It's not called the chat box. It's called question and answer. So put your thoughts in question and answer box, Gavin and others. So I see someone put that, you know, would transit frequency, like timing options when the bus comes, what would that fall into? So transit frequency, that's definitely what that is about. And one of your biggest challenges is that transit doesn't come right when you need it to.
I can read a couple of them to you
Okay.
as they come in. One says transit doesn't go where I need it or doesn't come often enough. And from Greg, we see my nearest transit stop is a full mile away, which entails a 25-minute walk just to start a trip. Let's see. Oh, now they're coming in kind of fast and furious. So sorry, guys, if they're bouncing around a little bit. No BART connection to downtown San Jose.
Yeah.
Bike lanes are blocked or otherwise rendered unsafe. From Wyan, super slow to get around. Comment about safety says feeling safe, especially in the evening on buses and light rail. Another comment about transit stops being far away. It says, I live in a suburban subdivision. The nearest bus stop, retail store, or school is a 20-minute walkway minimum. Kelly gets at one of our big ones. It says it can take time. It can take more time to take public transportation than to drive in traffic. Tell me if you need me to slow down.
I might have missed a couple because everyone has so many ideas.
Yeah, they're coming.
Perfect.
The sidewalks and bike lanes on bridges going over 101 feel dangerous or too old. And then a second comment is not enough destinations for the buses that do service areas. From Betsy, I'm seeing bike routes don't connect across freeways or major arterials. And from Gavin, reliable transit timing. Today transfers don't work, even supposedly timed once, and I have to arrive at a stop early. I'm seeing a lack of secure bicycle parking at destinations. And buses get stuck in traffic when there aren't dedicated lanes. The micromobility rental network isn't, oh, sorry. Your comments are coming in. I lost it. Okay. Micromobility rental networks aren't widely available outside of downtown San Jose. I could bike, but I don't always feel safe biking in traffic. Commuter bus routes don't run on weekends and stop early on weeknights. This gets back to bike parking a little bit, but concern that there won't be any bike racks at my destination, or that there will be too few or not secure enough. So another bike safety. I'm sorry if I'm missing people. They're coming in quickly, but I will make sure that we keep all of them. Limited or no transit to recreational destinations like hiking and state parks. Bike lanes and sidewalks abruptly end on major roadways. And then a lack of separated bike lanes on major high-speed roads.
Lack of bike lanes on
major high-speed roads.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we're sticking to the topic of bike lanes. Kelly says bike lanes are routinely blocked, which requires bikes and scooters to go into the drive lane, and that can be unsafe.
I'm gonna actually put that. So we kind of heard that one. Block. I'm gonna add a plus. And then we actually heard this one twice too, so I'm gonna add that one instead. And then over here, I definitely missed some more. If others wanna, I think we'll just go for another minute or two on this.
Okay, this one's about buses, and it says a lack of shade or benches. Some stops still just have a flag. Another comment about bus speeds. I think that was mentioned somewhere. If you wanted to give that a +1. Frequent bus routes still run infrequently in the evening and late night. Let's see. With a walking cane, difficulty crossing wide, busy streets such as Blossom Hill or Santa Teresa.
What was the first part of that? It's just difficult to cross busy streets with a walking cane, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see. Another +1 for lack of bike parking. Oh, here's one. Renters cannot easily own a bicycle because their landlord doesn't provide any bike racks or doesn't provide any secure ones. And on the topic of biking, poor or no alternatives to bike ped trails when they're closed or flooded. Another about transit speeds. Transit takes over 2 to 3 times more than driving to get to the destination. And they're too far apart that walking or biking doesn't seem feasible. And walking and biking feel unsafe because they do not get a leading pedestrian indicator at intersections, or that lead time is too short. There are more, but I don't know if you want to stop there to get to the next question number 2. You tell me, Taylor.
Okay. I think I would like to, oh, if I click it twice, it just goes away. Okay. I'm going to add a plus, and then we heard it again, and I'm going to add a thumbs up too. Okay. I'm going to put this one about leading pedestrian indicator, and then I think I'd like to move on to the next activity. All right. Does anyone else on the VTA team or the presenter team feel like there was another one that we might have missed? I definitely missed them, and we got all those comments, and we will record all of these. Mostly I just wanted to type them here so we could all see visually kind of in the moment.
Maybe I'll just add that I have seen a few in the last few, and it's a great point, Taylor, that we will definitely, VTA will be keeping all of these comments in the chat here. These are really great comments, but maybe just add one add one about land uses that are very far apart, and you know, it's a long way to get to, for instance, shops and services.
Okay,
there's a couple comments kind of along those lines in the last minutes. These are great comments, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. I'll give that a +1 because there were multiple. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. So the next piece of this is trying to match these solutions with some of these challenges, as well as the ones that, in particular would help you use other modes that it sounds like a lot of you are interested in using modes of travel that are not driving. And so if we have these options, these kind of types of solutions, which of these options might help solve your biggest transportation challenges, the ones you just told us about? And because you did just tell us about the challenge, try to focus on what's the solution for you. And you can try to stay within these categories, or we really have this other box because we know that you probably have ideas that are outside of the box, so to speak. So yeah, same thing. Please type into the question and answer, or you can raise your hand.
Jordan's going with an all of them approach. Thank you, Jordan.
All of them. Okay.
A bike ped network build out. Many things to do close by, can do all of my errands in a short radius.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Other solution options? Let's see what you guys can come up with. Separated bicycle paths for safety. More mixed use areas to decrease travel times.
That's similar to this one.
And traffic calming measures on high-speed roads to make them safer. And from Betsy, getting at the comments about blocked and inaccessible bike ped routes, she says existing bike lanes and walking routes need to be kept clear of debris, trash bins, and illegally parked cars. And construction closures need provisions for bikes.
This is like going to be here. And then I'm gonna put the construction projects as a separate sticky because it's kind of a different process.
I'm seeing eliminate or significantly reduce free car parking incentives. More frequent late evening service to take transit home from shows and nightlife.
I missed the last one. We'll come back to it. More
frequent late night service to take transit home from shows and nightlife. And the one before that was about reducing free parking incentives.
Oh.
More bike parking, not needing to bring your own lock, like bike lockers or bike rooms, bike spaces and garages. We have a +1 to slower streets.
For traffic calming, or does that mean
yes,
slow streets, like a slow streets program? Clarify in the Q&A if you want to.
Come back, Betsy. Clarify your slower streets. Better transit priority at long stoplights.
Nice.
And on that topic of buses, we're talking about dedicated bus lines, or bus lanes or bus lines, Ryan? More safety education for drivers to make the roads safer.
Okay.
Do we have increasing transit frequency? Because if we do, that's a +1. And another +1 for extending service to at least midnight.
Okay, nice. And We don't actually have one for transit frequency here, just priority.
Let's see. Solid physical bike lane barriers, not pylons. And thank you for the clarification, Wyan. It's bus lanes, dedicated bus lanes.
Mhm.
Less massive parking lots to make room for more housing and businesses. Public restrooms and water fountains at light rail stations.
Mm.
Affordable housing in downtown areas. On-demand mobility for people who cannot bicycle or drive. I've seen more mixed-use development allow more commercial uses near residential.
Up here too. And I missed the one right before on-demand mobility.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, does anybody else remember what I've said? I've gone through so many.
There's so many, yeah, great idea. Oh, maybe it was,
On-demand mobility for people who cannot bicycle or drive.
okay.
Another +1 for transit priority. Another +1 for dedicated bus lanes. Oh, here's one. Promoting existing transit benefits and making sure they're reaching the people who will use them. And then it says in parentheses, my employer offers pre-tax transit fares, but you'd have to know where to look for them.
Mm.
And a friend's apartment took around a year to issue the planned transit passes, which is good to note. Thank you. Oh, here we go. Routinely closing off downtowns to cars to encourage people walking and going by train or bus. And another +1 for secure bike parking. I know I missed some in there, guys. I'm sorry. They were coming fast and furious. But like we said with the first round, we have all these comments. They will be recorded and saved.
Okay, great. I think we'll wrap up the exercise. This was, yeah, and we'll be able to see all of these answers afterwards, but I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now and go back to the presentation. Okay. Great. So that was kind of more structured exercise, but we did want to leave some time for you to ask broader questions, more general questions. So in this situation, you can again use the question and answer box to ask, but you could also raise your hand and we can call on you. And if you are joining on a phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9, and then we can call on you.
I just want to clarify, this is a time that you can ask questions about the VMT project as a whole, right,
Mhm.
Rob? So I want to go back to one of the ones that came in really early as you were presenting. And it just says, what about all of the existing homes and workplaces that already generate driving?
Sure. This is Rob, VTA project manager, and I'm happy to help answer this question. This program that we're talking about, if what comes from this study that we're doing is recommending that a program be established, it would focus on reducing the amount of driving from new development projects. And the reason for that is because the state has changed the way we're evaluating new development projects and other projects under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, so that we focus now on reducing VMT or driving. So this project would, the kind of trigger for having reductions happen would be new development projects. However, it is possible that we could see development projects contribute towards transportation improvements, even in existing developed areas. So for instance, you could see a new development project that would contribute some funds to provide free transit passes to, for instance, an affordable housing development that does not currently offer free transit passes to its residents, or maybe to a school district where you have students that could benefit from having transit passes, and they live in maybe a disadvantaged community, an equity community within the county. So this can be part of the solution for helping reduce driving from development. Just briefly, it is important to consider that this is not the only way that we can work on that. Cities have the ability to implement transportation demand management ordinances, TDM ordinances, which can help try and reduce development from, reduce driving from other development as well. So hopefully that helps answer your question. I think that was Betsy.
Thanks, Rob. We had a hand. My hand disappeared. If you want to re-raise it, please do. And right now I'll go to Callie in the meantime. It says, will there be mechanisms to let new housing developments directly pay for increased VTA service?
Maybe I'll start and then see if Taylor has any thoughts too on this. But what I would say is, it is challenging just from a big picture perspective. It's challenging for a public transit agency to tie an increase in transit service to one particular development project unless it is of the scale that it would literally change travel patterns in a whole significant part of the county. Like, for instance, we are monitoring the development of City Place related Santa Clara across from Levi's Stadium, which would be something like 7 or 8 million square feet of development. And when that finally happens, it might change travel patterns enough that it would warrant new service or different service. Otherwise, we do routinely monitor, VTA routinely monitors development that's happening around the county. And when developments start to happen, usually kind of in clusters along key roadways, then we can consider potentially increasing service. I don't know if Taylor, if you wanted to just briefly talk about how my understanding is there can sometimes be constraints on using funding from development for transit operations, I think having to do with state law, right? Whether you're talking about it more of a development fee or a VMT mitigation program.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge is actually just that it's not a sustainable source of funding. And so, you know, when if you're gonna start running a new bus route, you need money every year for that route. And so developments are only really able to provide funding at one point in time, when they are built or when they are approved, or and there is no legal kind of mechanism, set, to use your word, set up to collect money multiple times. And so you wouldn't want to start a route that then has uncertain funding in the future, because it's a big capital investment to start a new route. And that's just also not a good user experience for riders if there's a route one year and then not the next. And so developments are just not a good match for funding operating expenses, unfortunately.
Maybe just a quick thought to add to that, thank you, Taylor, is just that VTA is open to partnerships with other entities to help subsidize or, basically provide some of the operating funding for, expanding a route or providing new service. So for instance, since the pandemic hit, we have actually launched the Valley Medical Center shuttle, which helps provide service to, the Valley Medical campus. And that's something that there's a funding contribution, kind of a partnership with the County Valley Medical Center. And we've also worked with some of the major employers in the Stanford Business Park or Stanford Research Park to provide funding for some of the express service there.
Thank you, Rob and Taylor. I am going to take a hand from Jordan and then a question from Akash next. So one moment, Jordan, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi. So one of the categories is around the development areas and like transit districts and such. And, a lot of that's going to be based around regulations, like making sure that the regulations are such that things that we want to get built actually get built. My personal pet project would be getting more bike parking in apartments because my apartment complex doesn't have any good bike parking whatsoever. And so I want to personally see that there's enough bike parking, but I'm sure there's other things that fall into that category. And I know from the VTA open house that VTA has some regulations and codes that apply to the new apartment complexes that get built on its properties. And so if this feedback comes up with some ideas for additional requirements we wanted to place on development, like let's say we wanted to double the number of bike parking spaces that are required, what would the process look like for getting the codes updated, and like how easy or hard would that process be? How many months or years would that take to change the codes?
Thank you. Rob, do you have an answer to any of this?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I kind of heard almost maybe two parts of this. One is about how much bicycle parking is provided at developments on VTA land. So many of you may know that VTA has a portfolio of real estate, basically properties in different parts of the county. They're often the park and ride lots at light rail stations that may be underutilized, where the park and ride lots are not as full as maybe they were projected to be when they were built 25 years ago. So in cases like that, VTA would have quite a bit of control to say, we want to see, a certain amount of bicycle parking, maybe in terms of parking spaces per unit that could potentially be even more ambitious than what a city might require, because VTA would be actually negotiating with the private developer for what kind of development goes in and the conditions. The other part of your question I think I picked up was just if we wanted to see stricter or more ambitious standards for the amount of parking, bicycle parking at developments in general, how would that, how long would it take? VTA has recommended bicycle parking quantities in what are called our bike tech guidelines. And we encourage the cities to all go by that. It's pretty ambitious, in terms of how many parking spaces per unit or how many parking spaces per square foot of office space. It's possible that we could update those and actually go more ambitious. It's something that actually would be a good topic to bring up if you were interested in advocating through the VTA Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So hopefully that answers your question, and we're happy to, engage offline, especially through the VTA BPAC.
Can I add something really fast, Rob? Okay. I just wanted to mention that all of the jurisdictions, or many of the jurisdictions in Santa Clara County are part of our technical kind of advisory group for this project, and so we anything that VTA has direct control over will definitely be part of our kind of the outcomes of this project, but we also will put together recommendations and pass on what you are saying here to our jurisdiction staff partners in each of the jurisdictions. So I don't know where you live, Jordan, but for anyone else on the call, we are working with, you know, city planners and engineers in all the cities in the county, and they are also very eager to know the answers to these questions of what your biggest transportation challenges are and how can we help them reduce driving, because they're facing the same challenges. So we will pass these on, because usually something like bike parking requirements are set at a city level.
Thank you, Taylor. That's a great point. And it sort of, you're reinforcing something that we had on a previous slide. And I think before we wrap up, we have that slide just about how your input will be used. And it's kind of a branch, you know, where some of this actually could feed directly into some sort of VMT mitigation or reduction program, and some would be more passed along to cities, the county, and other departments at VTA. Thanks.
Thank you, Taylor. Question from Akash. It says, we have all of these ideas and they aren't unpopular, I'm sure, but is the funding there already, or do we need to get more funding for new bus routes, etc.?
Well, maybe I'll start that. And again, this might be a good one for Taylor for you to hop in. That slide that we had pretty early on, that, you know, it's basically kind of just 3 steps. Developments happen and generate some more driving. Then there's hopefully a program that would emerge in the middle. And then we're getting to transportation solutions, you know, to your point, Akash. So what we're talking about here is hopefully a program that would have development projects, when they're getting approved, contribute some funding, or maybe pick from a list of different kinds of measures that reduce driving, and they would actually help implement them. So we would be generating some more funding for transportation improvements with this. It's important to just keep in mind the scale that we're talking about here. We would be talking about kind of a small to medium amount of funding, things that could, for instance, or amount of funding that could potentially fund free transit passes for, you know, as we mentioned before, maybe affordable housing developments or school districts or populations that really could benefit from them. We might be talking about bicycle and pedestrian improvements at key locations. We might be talking about subsidies for car share, bike share, scooter share, you know, mobility options, things like that. This is not something that would, for instance, you know, close the gap in a rail extension, something like that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Taylor.
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Yeah.
Our next question is about funding as well, but it says, will the developer be required to contribute to both transportation demand at the city and the VTA VMT program, or would the city's ordinance encompass the VMT program?
Again, maybe I'll start, and feel free, Taylor, if you may have more perspective on how this is starting to evolve around, you know, other counties. One thing that it's important for everyone in the meeting here, including, you know, the project team, for all of us to keep in mind, is this is a fairly new and emerging area. So this requirement by the state for development projects to reduce the amount of driving when they're approved is new. It became mandatory only in the year 2020, right, during the pandemic. And so there are not too many programs like this in place, or, you know, far along in the planning process. We're helping lead the way, VTA and a couple other counties. What we envision is that this would be something that would kind of complement and overlay on what cities have. If a city, for instance, has a transportation demand management ordinance, or a city is requiring developments to reduce VMT, you know, at the project level, maybe do some improvements right on the site, that would happen first. And then this is something that could help supplement that if the projects need to further reduce the amount of driving, kind of an overlay on say city requirements, and cities would opt into this kind of program and say, yes, we would like to have another option for reducing the amount of driving from developments. I don't know, Jordan, if you had some thoughts on, from what you're seeing in other counties, or.
Yeah, to answer or kind of restate similar to what Rob just said, individual development projects would still always do everything they could on site or kind of on the major roads, adjacent to the project site to reduce driving. So that includes TDM programs. It includes, improving sidewalk facilities, crosswalks, everything right next to a project site. That would always still happen. But in some cases, projects are located, for example, some projects get built in some somewhat more suburban environments, and there just aren't as many options to reduce driving. That's where that project could still be built, as we still need housing badly in the region, even if it doesn't go right in the most kind of transit-oriented neighborhood. But that project could then pay into this other project, this county-wide fund that could put money towards things like transit frequency improvements or a regional bicycle network, or transit discount fees. So this is where a project can't, because of the context it's being built in, reduce driving as much as it wants to. So yeah.
Our next question is from Gavin. It says, there's a lot of talk about housing development. What about office or industrial developments? Employers are often large, centralized destinations during peak times.
I can certainly take a shot at that. And I think the short answer here is a program like this would certainly be applicable to office or light industrial or research and development kinds of buildings, that are being proposed as well. Absolutely. One thing that VTA has worked with the cities and the county on over the last couple of years is just helping get a sense of where are the low and high VMT areas, or the low and high areas for, how much driving on average is done around the county. And one thing that we find is that in quite a few parts of the county, the office development are in the high VMT areas because we have a jobs housing imbalance. For instance, like in Palo Alto or in Mountain View or some of the northwest parts of the county, office development is going to often come in as a high VMT use because there's already quite a bit of office and jobs in relation to the amount of housing. So a program like this could help balance things out a little bit. And if an office development was proposed in a higher VMT area, it could help ensure that that development is providing measures to reduce the amount of driving along with its approval.
Thanks, Rob. This question is an anonymous attendee. It says, I see a lot of new developments that are adjacent to transit but don't have bus shelters. The lack of facilities sends the message that the people who shop at or live there aren't expected to use transit. Maybe there could be some kind of design guideline for this. Any research on the effect of rider amenities on bus ridership?
I'll start this, maybe the first half of this, and then I'll turn it over to Taylor to maybe talk a little bit about the second part about research on the effect of rider amenities. Taylor thinking about CAPCOA and the research basis that's out there. But I'll just say in general, VTA we have something called our TPEP, Transit Passenger Environment Plan, which is kind of our overall guidance on where we would like to see transit amenities. So things like shelters, benches, trash cans, solar lighting, things like that at bus stops. We go by that guideline. It was developed maybe 5 or 6 years ago with a lot of involvement of our committee structure, and it's intended to make sure that the locations that see the highest ridership and the most usage get the most investment, but we also prioritize investing in equity priority communities or parts of the county that have been historically underinvested in and where people have the most need, for instance, maybe the most reliance on transit services. So that's really what guides the investment and the priorities. And maybe Taylor, you could talk a little bit about the research basis for, the effectiveness of these.
Yeah, there definitely is research that shows that particularly shelters there's lots of bus stop amenities, benches, shelters, trash cans, real-time transit signage, and research shows that more amenities do actually increase ridership. The most important amenity is shelter. And this is most important in places that have more extreme weather, either heat and sun, or cold and wind, rain, snow. So it's important everywhere, but it has the highest correlation with ridership increases with extreme weather, which we don't have extreme weather in the Bay Area, but we certainly do have heat and sun in Santa Clara County. And so it would be important everywhere, but something to be prioritized where there is no, shade or street trees.
I can make a small plug if you don't mind, Rob. We have a monthly Q&A session for our Ask VTA program, and bus stop amenities, passenger amenities are one of the topics that we're planning to talk about in one of our upcoming ones. So that might be late November, early December. It's undecided, undetermined, I should say, but stay tuned. We'll have more details soon. And with that, I will go to another question. What does the efficacy analysis look like for this program, and what timeline? Does a development need to provide funding early enough to offset VMT by the time the development opens, or is it an N-year timeline?
These are some tough questions. Maybe I'll answer a part of this, defer to Taylor a little bit on this as well. But, maybe one thing I would say in general is these are the kinds of questions that this project that we're working on is intended to help answer. So for instance, in the phase 2 of this project, where we take this input, where we're talking about what kinds of improvements the community desires, and then we sort of filter out to see which would be eligible for a program like this, then we will also have experts in economic analysis that are on the team and in environmental analysis in the CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. We'll have experts in those areas take a look and make sure that the kinds of improvements we're talking about are justifiable, that there's like a legal basis, a legal connection between the improvement and development, and make sure that they are, for instance, economically, look at the kind of the economics of it and which ones are the most cost effective. So these are the kinds of questions that we will be definitely getting into as we go along, and making some recommendations on later in the study. And maybe I'll just turn it over to Taylor and just to see if you have anything else to add in this regard. It's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. I don't think these are things we have the answer to yet. VTA and Santa Clara County really are at the leading edge of trying to implement a program like this. So we are working on these answers.
Thank you. We're nearing the end of our meeting. I do have, I think, 1 or 2 more questions I'd like to just throw out quickly. And this is another logistical question about a VMT program, but how does the program model out-of-county developments that would impact VMT in Santa Clara County, or the reverse?
Why don't I get started here? And actually, this is a great question for Taylor to jump in on as well. thinking about kind of other counties that are working on this. So in general, I think what I would say is if a project is happening in Santa Clara County, if we're talking about a development project in Santa Clara County, let's say it was in Palo Alto or in Milpitas, where you're close, or in Gilroy, where you're close to a county boundary, this would take into account the amount of driving that it's generated, even if it's in another county, because we use travel demand models, basically kind of fairly sophisticated models of land use and transportation, to estimate how much driving a development would generate. And it doesn't just cut off at the county boundaries. It definitely factors in longer trips. So this would take into account trips that are generated from developments in Santa Clara County, even if they go across county boundaries. Now, developments in other counties, it would depend on what that county and the cities within that county are doing, in terms of maybe exploring a program like this. So maybe, Taylor, you could talk about, for instance, what CCAG in San Mateo County is thinking about.
Well, yeah, CCAG is exploring a similar type of program. So the modeling that we're doing for this project is very similar to the modeling that's done for an individual project. And like Rob said, the process uses a travel demand model, which most of the models in the Bay Area, including VTA's model, are set up to include the full 9-county Bay Area, all the way up to Napa and Sonoma. And then that model doesn't end in the Bay Area. It also has inputs from external regions like Monterey County, Santa Cruz County. And so those model inputs are fed into the model. So it also includes visitors, truck trips, everything that passes through Santa Clara County. But the key analysis here is still what driving does a Santa Clara County project generate. But when we're calculating that, we know, let's just say, for example, a new Costco wants to be built, it wants to build in Santa Clara County. If there is already a Costco, so let's say, one wants to be built near the border in Milpitas, but there's already a Costco right across in Fremont, and we build a new one in Milpitas, we know that actually trips might be reduced by building a new Costco in Milpitas, because people in Milpitas who want to go to Costco are no longer driving as far to the one in Fremont. They can just go to their local Costco in Milpitas. And so it interacts with trips that are happening in other counties, other parts of the region, to come up with that calculation. But so I guess that mostly answers your question. I will also add that, Santa Clara County is thinking about this, San Mateo County is thinking about this, and then the region as a whole is also thinking about how to reduce VMT. And there are really important regional projects like the BART to Silicon Valley coming to downtown San Jose projects, which again, like Rob mentioned, a program like this isn't going to fund a mega infrastructure project like that, but the rest of the region and MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Council, are thinking about projects at that level that can really connect the whole region and reduce driving at a different scale.
Taylor, I think we will wrap it up there so we can get to our next steps. I want to thank you all for your questions and for participating in the interactive exercises. I feel like we got a lot of good feedback for tonight, so we appreciate that. And now let's talk about what we're going to do with this input.
Okay, guys, we will use your input by summarizing it, and then, like Rob said earlier, filtering it. We're going to have some experts take a look at it, and this will provide other ideas for other cities and counties, as well as VTA, and phase 3, confirming it. We want to thank you all for participating. And the next steps, the second phase of the engagement plan will be available in spring of 2024. Draft recommendations and report fall in 2024 as well. And you can stay tuned on the website provided. I'm sure we can drop this website down in the chat so you guys can copy and paste it.
Thank you all. Thank you everyone so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a good night.